Welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host is Justin Baker. And Justin, we are on the precipice of trade deadline.
Trade deadline.
This is what we live for. Give me trade deadline day all day. I think this year has some potential to, we've already seen some pretty big names moved. And I think this year is going to be one of the better ones.
Yeah, what excites me about this year is typically you have a couple free agents where you're like, oh yeah, they're definitely moving. This team's not going to be able to re-sign them. So you get all excited. But this year, there's not, honestly, like the biggest name might be like Brock Nelson, right? Which, okay, that's not really a marquee name. No offense to Brock Nelson, but usually you got like a top line guy.
But it's Rantanen, it's Marner. You know, there's
well, yeah, but Marner's not getting traded. That's probably not going to happen.
But you don't know Rantanen's not getting traded again.
Right. So you can throw that in there. But again, I think that just makes it a little bit more exciting because I think now you might see teams target guys with term instead of just going for the pure rentals.
That is true. Yep. And I think there are enough teams still in it, too, to make it interesting. Sometimes we've had those years where it's, dude, we know who's making the playoffs. Like, it is a foregone conclusion. Right now in the Eastern Conference, we're not out of the world where the New York Islanders could still make the playoffs. No, it's not likely. I'll admit it's not likely, but they're only 5 points out. They've got a game in hand. Yeah, they have to jump, 6 teams to get in there, but
right.
You go on a 5-game winning streak, and you're probably within 2 points of a playoff spot. It's possible. There's a lot of teams that still have some hope. I won't go as far to say that the Pittsburgh Penguins have much hope because they've been bad. Even in that game against the Leafs, where 6-5 in overtime, that game was almost like the Leafs were just like, all right, let's just see how many you guys score so that we know how many we need to get. That's really what it felt like in that game. I'll tell you what, though, that goal by Matthew Nyes walking over the blue line with hardly any time left after he picked off a cross-ice pass to the D and him scoring with 0.1 seconds left was I've seen where guys, obviously we've all seen where guys score with little time left, but it seems like usually it's like a scramble around the net and something like that happens. But it was almost like their goaltender just went, oh, the time's up. And
that's why down to Scranton
launched that in the corner, right? That was fun. A fun game. Those are the games as a fan that you want to see. Like, all right, my team won. You don't care about that point going to Pittsburgh. By the way, Pittsburgh is a -50 goal differential. They are bad.
Goaltending's been bad.
There's one team, the San Jose Sharks, who are worse, and that is they've won 15 games. The San Jose Sharks. They are like borderline. Will they get 20 wins this year? Because my guess is that there are some guys on their way out in San Jose as well, which we will, of course, get to. So we are going to talk some possible trades. Justin has drawn up a lovely list of 10 trades. We're going to break them down together. And before we do that, though, let's just talk about the 3 trades that have happened here recently. Let's start with the most recent because it's the biggest one, and that is Seth Jones to the Florida Panthers in exchange for Spencer Knight and a first-round pick likely in 2026. Also, a 4th-round pick goes to the Florida Panthers. How do you think Seth Jones is going to fit in with the Panthers?
I think, listen, he's not going to be that Seth Jones that we had in the top 10.
Columbus Blue Jackets.
Yeah,
Seth Jones.
Exactly. Yeah, you're not going to get that guy. But I think in a 4th or number 4, number 3 defensive spot, I think you're going to get a guy who's maybe a little re-energized. You know what? I go from Chicago the last couple of years, a dumpster fire of a team, Stanley Cup contender, right? What's not to get excited about? So I think you're going to see a little spark out of Seth Jones, I think, here for the next few weeks. And honestly, right, he's got a lot of talent to work with up front now too. So it's not just Connor Bedard and that's all you've got, right? Now you've got guys at least in the top 9 you can dish the puck to, and you're going to get some sort of offense out of it. So that's another reason to be excited. We know Seth Jones is not going to be the shutdown defensive guy. He's never really been, let's just be honest about it. But I think in Florida, they've got a good structure there of defensemen. They've got good coaching. Miko, he's going to do a great job, I think, on that left side, being that shutdown defenseman. He'll let Seth Jones do his carry the puck thing. And then, Yeah, in the worst case scenario, you could put him with Nate Schmidt or just roll those lines a little bit more. Or even if you want to get into it, just put him with Forsling and see how that one works out. But
Boy. Oh, and correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron Ekblad plays on PP1.
and that might go to Jones now.
I got to think that you are liking Seth Jones a little more than Aaron Ekblad at PP1. You moved Ekblad up there after Montour left, and Montour, his last year in Florida, didn't have the same point production that he did when he had, 76 points. I think that Seth Jones can bring that side of the game. And I think for the Panthers, like, that's what they need. Really, they just needed somebody who they could put into their top 4 that was more competent. And they got that guy. They needed to replace Montour. They never did.
And the other thing about that, too, is obviously Gustav Forsling signed. He's going to be there for a while, but Ekblad is not. So I have to imagine Seth Jones is going to be put into that PP1 spot. They might swap him and Ekblad out a few times just to see what that can. Is this a guy that we can, okay, we're going to be good with Forsling and Seth Jones here for a while, for the next 5 years, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I wonder with Ekblad is I don't think that this is a case of him not wanting to be in Florida.
Right.
He's been there his entire career. He's gotten plenty of money. I would say that his $7.5 million, it's on the high side now. He has probably taken a step back. He's 29 right now. He'll sign this new deal and be over 30. How much are you going to trust a guy who was never the fastest skater in the world anyways, and now he's going to be 30, 33, probably 35 or 36 by the time this deal ends? I'm wondering if Florida goes, we can give you a max deal, but it's going to be at like $5 million. And then just LTI. Worry about down the road, but he'll get all his money, and maybe that's the way you go. $5-6 million, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, $6 million I think would be fair for a guy like that, especially the cap where it's going. Because Look, he's still, again, maybe he's not the fleetest of foot, and again, like most teams, when you get over 30, you start anticipating a downward slide at some point, but he's still got a great hockey IQ. He plays a very responsible game. Even if he ends up being a second pairing guy here for the next 5-6 years, I still think at $6 million, you're getting a good deal there.
Yeah, he's having his best season, statistically speaking, since 21-22. So,
well, they don't have anybody else to roll out there.
Definitely a good time to be having your best season, right, in a contract year. Of course he could leave. Could he get a little bit more money up front? Probably, but why would you leave the best thing going right now? Like, Seth Jones, supposedly he had 2 options where he would be willing to let Chicago deal him to, and it was Dallas or Florida. Dallas didn't even want him, so it was Florida. And I will say, for the Chicago Blackhawks, to get Spencer Knight and a first-round pick out of this, and they had to hold on to, $2.5 million.
Yep.
That is not insignificant for 3 years. But I don't think that in 3 years, if the Blackhawks are like, damn, I wish we had that extra $2.5 million when the cap's probably over $100 million at that point, then it probably means things are going really well. Things have turned around big time in Chicago if they're worried about those extra $2.5 million, and you're willing to put up with that. But likely, maybe by that point, progression-wise, you're just hoping that the Blackhawks could be a playoff contender in 2 or 3 years. Bedard will be out of his entry-level deal, and whoever they take at the draft this year, which will likely be pretty darn high as well. So it's, I think, a great move. And Spencer Knight really does have the potential to be that goaltender for them. Like, he's looked pretty decent this year again, granted for quite a good team, but I think it's a great move for them. They now have their goaltender of the future, and he's really a goaltender of now. Like, he can play. And then for Spencer Knight, he's going to be able to probably make more money now because he's going to be a number 1 goalie along with Peter Mrazek. He's going to share the net with Mrazek. They're going to go, we need to lose this one, so we got to get Mrazek in there tonight. Right? No, the Blackhawks did nicely here, and 2026 first-round pick. They have, 4 first-round picks over the next couple drafts, so they certainly continue to stockpile there. They've done a really nice job at bringing players in and then getting young assets for them when they need to deal them. Like, this has been a very good rebuild for the Blackhawks in the sense that They're not just like the San Jose Sharks. When you look at their roster right now, they've been in a rebuild for several years, and you look at them and you go, okay, who would they deal at the trade deadline? Certainly there are candidates to be dealt. Like there's guys who have expiring deals, but maybe Luke Kunin is a somewhat desirable guy, Nico Sturm, but it's not, they don't have a whole lot where you go, ooh, we got to get that guy off the Sharks. Like they're probably not bringing in any first round picks here in trade deadline. And whereas feels like Chicago, every trade deadline here, they're getting like 2 first round picks. So good on them for actually being able to bring in some talent so that they can move it out when the time comes. Okay, let's go back to this other trade that we have, the Nyquist trade. Nashville Predators send Gustav Nyquist to the Minnesota Wild for a second-round pick in 2026. How do you feel like Nyquist is going to fit in with the Wild?
He's going to fit in great. He's been there once before. I don't see any reason why he won't be as successful this time around because, look, obviously in Nashville, he hasn't had the points, right? He had a phenomenal 70-plus point season last year with Nashville.
Which was certainly a bump. Like,
yeah,
that I don't know that anybody really expected that from him again.
Right, exactly. Yeah, 50, 60 points would have been very realistic this year. And I still think he's capable of those kind of numbers. But the thing that most people don't realize about Nyquist is even if you look at what a terrible team Nashville's been, his possession numbers, his Corsi numbers have been still really good this season. So, again, you put him with the right people in Minnesota, and there's no reason why I don't think he still can't succeed, especially in that system that they have there. Again, we don't know Kirill Kaprizov, what his injury status is going to be. I don't know how long he's going to be out. Same with Eriksson Ek, so they definitely need it
back by the playoffs.
Okay.
But I think that he's a great substitute for who you can bring in for a second-round pick, and being able to drop him into your top 6 is solid. I actually forgot that he was traded to the Wild once before at trade deadline.
Look with him too. So
from the Columbus Blue Jays, only played 3 games, but 5 points in those 3 games in 22-23.
Yeah, I think he and Zuccarello were really gelling that last time around. And
we'll see. That's right.
Yeah, we'll see how it works this time around. I think, again, I see no reason why he can't come in, especially with that system, with the forward group they have, and put up some decent numbers. Now, I will say the Minnesota Wild still have some work to do as far as trade deadline is concerned, and maybe I'll address that. We'll see. But
yeah, I wonder how many players have played for Nashville, Columbus, and Minnesota, which all came into the league right around the same time. I think 1, 2, 3, they came into the league. So I think along with Atlanta Thrashers, those were the 4 expansions up from 28. Or 28? No, up from 26. They slowly added those guys in. So I wonder how many players have played for all 3 of those teams. I'm sure that we could find it in what's that game with the squares where it's like the team and you have to find the guys that have played for both?
Oh,
I can't remember what that is.
It's going to drive me nuts.
You watching at home, you're like, I'm literally playing it right now while I listen to you idiots. Don't remember the name of it, but you could just send us a message at OT Hockey Talk, Instagram, X, wherever. Remind us what it is. All right, and there's one more trade, and that trade is between the Avalanche and the New York Rangers. The Avalanche get Ryan Lindgren, Jimmy Vesey, and Hank Kempf for Juicy Parsonen, Calvin DeHaan, which feels like Calvin DeHaan is dealt everywhere he goes. 2025 second-round pick and a 25 fourth-round pick goes to the Rangers. Seems like a little bit of a cap dump.
A little bit, right? Ryan Lindgren's going to be a UFA. There's no reason I don't think he's sticking around there.
And New York retained half of Lindgren's contract.
Yeah, so they make a little bit of space, and rumor is right now they're also holding out Riley Smith for management or roster management, whatever you want to call it. They've got some work to do. And again, they're one of those teams like you talked about with the Islanders, just sitting a few points out.
They could do it. I mean, we've said it time and time again. If there's one team that can storm back here and make everybody regret that they wrote the Rangers off, it's the Rangers. It is the Rangers. JT Miller has been just, I feel like, picked that team up put him on his back and was like, let's go. I hate Vancouver. We're not missing the playoffs, and I'm going to take all the anger I had there. And I have to think Vancouver fans are looking at that trade going, why did we not deal Elias Pettersson? Because did you know that Ilya Sorokin has more goals than Elias Pettersson? since that trade.
Thank you, Steven Stamkos. But
Steven Stamkos put into his own net. Just like I think that play beautifully exemplifies what's been happening to the Nashville Predators this year.
to a T.
To a T. Yeah, it's unfortunate for them. So, yes, I think the Rangers are definitely gearing up to probably go out and make one more move.
Yeah, they have to. I don't know what Adam Fox's timeline is, but they need a spark here pretty quick, because if he's going to be out for quite a while, they don't really have much on the back end right now. Maybe bringing in a big piece with some term would be great. I don't know if you want to talk to Erik Karlsson or not. Maybe he'll go to New York, but the spark.
Yeah, they do. They do. All right, let's jump into these trades, because I think those are going to help us. They're going to help us figure out what to make of this upcoming trade deadline, because, like you said, I think this trade deadline is going to be exciting. As far as UFAs go, it's not that thrilling, but I do think that there are some players on the cusp that could get dealt, that have more than a year or two left on their deal. So let's go through these together.
Yeah, I've got a few of them. Pretty much what I put together was a list of trade predictions that I think are realistic, but also there's a couple on there where I said, hey, I would love to see this. So
Dream scenario,
a couple of them, yeah, towards the top of the list. But starting off at number 10, Jack Hughes last night. I think we don't know what the timeline is, but I think it was already well known that New Jersey needed some center depth anyways. They were searching for that. And so I've got New Jersey going to Boston, sending Curtis Lazar and a second rounder for 2025 over for Trent Frederic.
That would be a solid move for the New Jersey Devils. Are we assuming now that the Boston Bruins are going to sell it off?
Yeah, I think so. At least for their UFAs, I think there's a higher probability that they're just going to say, you know what, even if we get in the playoffs, right, we've got a lot of injuries, right? Hampus Lindholm, Charlie McAvoy. We don't really know what's going on with a lot of these guys. Jeremy Swayman just doesn't have the swagger this year, right? Maybe it's just an opportunity for them to say, hey, let's make an attempt. Let's try to get in. But if we get in, great. If not, whatever, at least we still acquired some assets. We got some futures, and we can reload next year when we have some more cap space.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us have taken the Rangers and the Bruins and put them into the same little boat, because they've been hovering around the same place in the standings, going through the same thing, like two teams expected to be good. Although I think the Rangers expected to be better than the Bruins, but the Bruins still have a large part of their team from last year and the year before, and they added some pieces. I don't think we thought they'd be really bad, but they've been bad. And it's the Rangers are, as far as goal differential goes, they're at 0. So you look at that and you go, all right, so things haven't been going great, but it's not all bad. Like, you're relatively finding yourself in the middle. Like, some games you're losing a 1-goal game, other times you're winning, and they are exactly 500, like 30, 26, and 4. So they've won 30 games and they've lost 30 games. They've only losing 4 games in OT at this stage of the game. There's some teams that are in the playoffs who've lost, like Columbus ahead of them, have lost 8. And there's your difference. They happen to force a few games to OT, and the Rangers didn't. And there's your difference in the playoff race. The Boston Bruins are a minus 28. They have looked much worse. They not only can they not score, they also can't keep the puck out of the net. And nothing is going right for them. It just feels like one of those years for the Bruins where you just go, I don't even think, what is our benefit to get into the playoffs right now? To go and get destroyed by Washington or Toronto again? Like, I know that Boston has Toronto's number, but I think this would be the year where it would be like a feast on the Bruins.
Yeah, it would be.
Going to take it out on them. But I don't see them getting there anyways. You look at what Montreal's been doing. They've won 4 in a row. They're coming for the Bruins. The Flyers have been a little bit better. I just don't like what's happening. Like, the Bruins are on the downswing, and these other teams have a little bit of life. They're like, we're not going to make the playoffs anyway, so let's just play loose hockey now, and you see the benefit of that. Whereas the Bruins, I think there's still some pressure there, and it's just not working.
Yeah, exactly. And look, Trent Frederic, he's gonna command a little bit of a He's going to get a second rounder. Let's just put it that way. I think a lot of teams are going to value what he brings. He's a pain in the ass to play against. He's sandpaper. He's grit, and he can still put up 15, 20 goals. For me, this is a guy I think ideally every team would like to have on their third line. Again, considering the fact that Jack Hughes may be out, I don't know what his injury situation is. I think they're gonna pull the trigger quicker than I think most teams would, and that's why I think it's going to cost them a second rounder.
Yeah, I think that they need to do something if Hughes is going to miss some time. We just can't afford. You can't blow this. I know they're 4 points up on the Blue Jackets, but the Blue Jackets have 2 games in hand. It was maybe like a week ago. It felt like there was no chance. Now there's a chance. Hughes goes down, like anybody else goes down, you're in trouble. I know Markstrom's been down for a little bit, and that hurt them. And you've got the Rangers breathing down. I know they're 8 points back. They're probably less of a threat. I think New Jersey can probably find their way through it. And if you're New Jersey, do you want to play Carolina in the first round, or do you want to find yourself playing Toronto or Washington? I guess
it's all terrible.
No choice is good. No choice is good. Yeah, it would be a good move for them. I agree. With the Bruins, maybe would want to deal him out to the West a little more. I don't know. Sometimes, but
yeah, we'll see.
They probably don't care right now.
Exactly.
All right, trade number 9.
Number 9. So we've got Edmonton. We've heard recently Evander Kane. They're looking to deal him. He's got 1 year left. And I looked at it in the fact that, okay, Edmonton needs some scoring, right? We know that they've been looking, again, for a long time for someone to play with Leon Draisaitl. I think they go to the island and they get Kyle Palmieri. They bring him in at a 50% retained salary, so a 2.5 EV. They get him in a 6th-round pick for Evander Kane and a 2025 third-rounder.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Is anyone really going to trade for Evander Kane at this stage?
Lou Lamoriello is the only crazy guy I think that would actually do it because, look, Evander Kane fits his roster. He's over 30 years old. He's starting to slow down. That's perfect for Lou, right? That's what he wants in New Jersey. So
he's going slow.
Yeah, so you're going to lose Kyle Palmieri. You're going to lose Brock Nelson. So there goes some goal scoring. So if you're Lou, you're probably like, oh, I can get a 30-year-old goal scorer who can maybe come in and help out. Sign me up.
Kane just has not been the same since he got hurt. I wonder if we're seeing the end here for Evander Kane.
I think so. That's why I think the island's the perfect place for him.
See, and this is what we talked about. What year was it that he got traded to Edmonton? When was that?
Out of San Jose.
That would have been 3 years ago. Oh, it was during COVID, right? It was like 21. The year after. 21. Yep. 2021 he was dealt in the off. It was later, right? Because he had all the stuff about, is he in trouble because he went over the border and all that stuff. Yeah, and I think at the time things looked really good that first year and things had been going well. He had a decent year last year too. And I think we said Evander Kane is about a 3-year shelf life wherever he goes. And guess what? He's expired. His best by date has come and gone again. And I don't think that it's so much that people don't like him now, but it's more he's been injured. He's not there. You just got to move on from him. And once again, he'll probably have a good first little bump for whatever team grabs him if he can be healthy enough. That's a big if.
That's a big if, right? But look, I think Edmonton gets a couple things out of this. 1, they get rid of Evander Kane's contract.
Yep.
And 2, they get a proven goal scorer in Kyle Palmieri to play on the wing, hopefully with Leon Draisaitl, and gives them a little bit more options in their top 6 there.
All right. Kyle Palmieri dealt again.
Again.
Dealt not too long ago. Okay, let's go to your number 8.
Number 8. So we already talked about one trade with Florida, and you know what? I think they're still loading up for more. They put Matthew Tkachuk today on long-term IR, so they're creating some cap space. I know they want to probably make a big swing for a top 6 forward, but they don't have the picks for it. However, I do think they've got enough ammunition in the chamber. They're going to go to Chicago. They're going to deal for Ryan Donato, who has looked fairly good this year, playing with Connor Bedard a lot and on that second line. So I think they go ahead and grab a guy like that who can play at center, can play on the wing, and all they have to do is they send Jesper Boquist back there. They send a prospect in Jack Devine, who is, I would say, a B+ prospect, and a 2025 5th rounder. And I think it's enough to get it done.
Okay. I don't know that you'd have to give up that much for Ryan Donato. He's been having a good 43 points. He's been having a good year. It's so difficult because when you're playing on a terrible team, you have to wonder what is he going to be like when he goes to that team. Like, he's going to get far less ice time. He's not going to be as productive. He's also been playing for a team that's been playing for nothing for a very long time. Seems like he would be a risk to me to go grab because of
Okay.
those things. Is he that valuable, or is he's just capitalized? Last year he had 30 points. Year before that, 27 points. Year before that, 31. Like, he's a 30-point guy, and he's happened to be having his best year in a contract year. Now, maybe he goes into the playoffs for you and he produces because he's looking for a new contract. And maybe it's more of a watch out if you're signing this guy in the off season because he is a little bit of a fool's gold kind of vibe. But
I think that's more or less probably it, too. And you also have to remember, too, in Florida, he's got quality guys on the third line to play with if he's slotted where I think in that middle six somewhere. Whether you're on the second line with Sam Bennett or Listerainen on that third line, you've got quality guys. So I think he can still produce a little bit, and he can still play on the PK. He can play on power play, too, if you want to squeeze him in there, too. So he's versatile in all three zones. So I like this grab for Florida. I think it adds a little versatility. And again, I think they're going to want a big fish, but I don't think they're going to have the pieces. They don't have the picks to get a big fish.
okay. Yep. Yeah, they have to do something, but it's going to fill in the roster. All right, number 7.
Yeah, 7, probably the most coveted UFA center. That is Jake Evans. I think for me, it's the Washington Capitals that end up snagging him. They've been looking for a third-line center for quite a while. Lars Eller came back, and he just hasn't worked out. So I think they make a move. They make a play to say, hey, we're a contender this year. We're going to go out and get Jake Evans, a guy who is not only going to improve their power play, but going to improve their bottom six. So for me, they're probably going to have to overpay a little bit because there's going to be a lot of teams after Jake Evans. One team we talked about, Minnesota Wild, they could use help on their league-leading worst PK. But yeah, they're going to send Montreal a conditional second-round pick, which for me is just going to be a first-rounder if they make the Eastern Conference Finals. And I think that's enough to get it done.
Okay. Yeah. Again, another 30-point guy, right? Like 28 points this year, 28 points last year. He's probably end up with 35, 38 points somewhere in there this year. Been playing nicely for Montreal. Now, if Montreal, right now, what did I say? They're 4 points out of a playoff spot. 3 points out of a playoff spot. Let's say, what does Montreal plays? My guess is 2 more games before the trade deadline. They play tonight. We are recording this on Monday at about 5:30 p.m. So they're playing Buffalo, which theoretically that should be a pretty easy W the way Buffalo's been playing. And they will, let's see, they play on Thursday. All right, so they play on Thursday against the Edmonton Oilers, who have been slumping as well. So let's say they go out and they win both those games. Detroit loses to Carolina tomorrow night, and they find themselves at that point sitting just 2 points out or 1 point out of the playoffs. Do they still go out and make these moves, like trading a Jake Evans? Are they going to go and trade UFAs, or are they just going to stand pat? They've got Joel Armia, Christian Dvorak. They've got other UFAs as well. David Savard, once again, a UFA who's been sought after before. Do you think they make those moves if they're in a better spot in 4 days?
Yeah, 100%. I think this team's realistic. I think Marty St. Louis is going to be very realistic about it, talking with management. Yes, it'd be great to make the playoffs, and maybe they do. But realistically, I think everybody knows, including management, Hughes from the top down, they know this team, if they get in, they're not going to make any noise. They're going to be an easy out. I think whether you're playing Washington, Toronto, Florida, it doesn't matter. Yeah. I think it's 5-6 games at the most. So maybe you get a win, you get lucky. But realistically speaking, this team's better suited outside of the playoffs. And so
you're willing to, for your fans too. I think your fans just go, it's fine. Like, we've reserved ourselves we're going to miss the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. I think
lining half the year, that hurt.
Yeah, a little bit. And I think expectations leading into this year, they knew they weren't going to make the playoffs, or at least predictions were they weren't getting in. So if they get in, that's a nice treat. But I think realistically, they knew they were going to be in this position to sell off at the deadline.
Are they going to sell off everyone? Is Dvorak out? Are they is it just going to be a Jake Evans kind of thing? Is David Savard out? Are we going full blown, just let's get rid of everybody? Or are we just, because if you trade Jake Evans, you get a little bit for him. And I don't think Jake Evans is the difference between making the playoffs or not. Things could still go really well. The next guy up in the lineup isn't that much worse. So I don't think that makes a big difference. But if they go lose David Savard and Joel Armia, then we're talking about a more significant dent in the team.
Yeah, Jake Evans, I think, is more realistic. Joel Armia, while he'd be great, again, as a third, fourth line guy, penalty killer, at $3.4 million, right? That's hard to move. So you got to eat 50% of that contract. And usually with stuff like that, teams are asking for a little bit more in return to save you some money on the AAV there. So
yeah, and they have, just FYI, they have retained, they're retaining on Petrie and Allen right now from last year's trade deadline. So they have one spot left, yes.
Yeah, and David Savard, I think, is the more likely candidate to use up that retainer, right? Just because I think teams covet that right-handed shot. Now, I will say David Savard's game has gone to shit this year. He looks a lot slower, maybe not as highly sought after as he was the last few deadlines, but I do think there's a probability he's going to get moved. If at $1.7 million, you can get a number 6, number 7 right-handed defenseman, yeah, I'll throw you a
He's
fourth
been to the
rounder.
Stanley Cup Finals, and yeah.
Yep,
absolutely. All right, let's go to number 6.
All right, number 6, your team, the Toronto Maple Leafs. I know you probably already know this, but they've been pining for a number 3 center. So for me, I thought about this and threw around Jake Evans, Ryan Donato, guys that I thought, again, could go in there. But for me, I think Toronto wants to look at a little bit more. They want a little bit more grit. They want a guy who I think has maybe a little term on him. So I looked at Scott Laughton from the Philadelphia Flyers, who I think brings such an awesome leadership quality to him and a whole lot of other intangibles. Now, they are a little tight up against the cap, so they're going to have to, again, I think this is going to be another one of those 50% retained deals. He'll come in at $1.5 million. And to Philadelphia, they've got to send Nick Robertson and a third rounder to get it done.
Nick Robertson for Laughton. I don't know. Nick Robertson's been playing decent. I don't know how I'd feel about that.
Yeah, but so here's the thing, though. When I thought about that, too, I'm like, okay, could they send another prospect? I do think Philly, in order to make this move, especially for a guy like Scott Laughton, they're going to want somebody who's ready to go, ready to step in and play. And I don't really see much as far as what I would consider expendable assets on that team. So for me, Nick Robertson made the most sense because more than I do that they've been talking about moving him for the last year. He just really is.
He's the one who he said, I want out. And he's obviously been patient. And he's played all right. He's got 11 goals in 52 games. So he's been all right.
Yeah. But to get the number 2, number 3 center out of it, I mean, to me, I would make that move. And he's got term, too, which is why I think it would cost you a roster player like Robertson.
Yeah. I think maybe a 1-for-1. I don't know about the third round pick. I think you could probably hold that off. And it would also depend. Here's the big block for that trade. Could be, how's John Tortorella going to feel about Nick Robertson? I don't know. Does he look at him and say, here's a guy that I can turn into a little Cam Atkinson or something like that? Or are you looking at him going, he's not the kind of guy that I'd want? Especially when you give up Scott Laughton. You're giving up Scott Laughton. You're probably hoping that you can get someone else that could fill a role similar to him, a little tougher. I don't think Nick Robertson's in that. He's smaller. And did you see Scott Laughton and taking his, they reenacted The Last Supper?
Oh, no.
Because I know I'm getting dealt. Right? So he went out with a bunch of teammates and they reenacted the famous painting. And it was very fun. It was very funny. And of course, some people lost their minds about it and said it was rude or something. And even John Tortorella was like, dude, these guys are hockey players. This is hilarious. I don't get over it. It's just a painting.
Oh, that's great.
Anyways, that's all right. There's the Scott Laughton. Getting Scott Laughton, that would be a big move for the Leafs. He's a right-handed shot, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. And again, that's always something I think. No, he's left-handed. I'm sorry.
He's left-handed.
Yeah. Regardless, he's a great center. He's good at the dot. He's good at both ends of the ice.
Yeah, kind of one of those guys where you go, I think he would be a good playoff guy if he could ever get in there.
Right.
I guess he would have made the playoffs back when he was younger, but now as the developed defensive kind of specialist centerman that he is, I think he deserves a shot and he'd be great. Now, he does have term. I got to think that's got to make Philadelphia at least pause. You got to get enough for this guy because he could just come back next year and be fine.
Well, he's got one year, right? So I think again, that's why I say Nick Robertson. I think that's why you got to get a guy like that. And because you've looked at what Danny Briere has been doing, he's been loading this team up with younger talent,
Sure.
bringing in Jamie Drysdale, players like that. I think again fits the mold of what they probably want to see in there. And maybe again a change of scenery is enough to put him on the wing with maybe a guy like Mikheyev. I have no idea, but we'll see.
All right. Before we move on to number 5, we are going to take a quick timeout here from our newest sponsor, Alpha Progression. Have you ever felt like your off-ice training is stuck in neutral while your game deserves overdrive? What if I told you there's an app that's like having a world-class strength coach in your pocket without the $500 a month price tag? Alpha Progression is the ultimate wingman for packing on muscle. Built by competitive bodybuilders and backed by science, this app cuts the fluff and delivers laser-focused programs to make you stronger, faster, and harder to knock off the puck for those of you that actually still play hockey. So here's the play-by-play. Custom plans for hockey-ready muscle. Tell Alpha Progression your gear, what you have, what gym you go to, and then your goals. I was using it at the gym today, and it was really cool because I did a warm-up set at a certain weight, and it was like, here's how many reps or how much weight you should do for your 10 rep and for your 8 rep max, and to be able to plug in and play with the numbers there. The interface is smoother than a fresh sheet of ice. Track every set, adjust on the fly, and stay focused even if you're a rookie. And right now, Alpha Progression is hooking up our listeners with 20% off your first payment. You can go to alphaprogression.com/overtime to unlock the 2-week free trial. That is $12.99 a month or $80 for the year. It's all less than the cost of a post-game beer. And that's the $80. This is less than the 17 beers that Justin gets post-game. All right. We'll have the link in the show notes. You can click it there and turn your gym time into a weapon. That's how we dominate the third period here, folks. And that's how we're going to dominate the next 5 trades in our repertoire. Justin, let's go to number 5.
All right. Said just to kick off the top 5 here. So we've got a team, in my opinion, who's been the hottest team in the NHL. We know they always love to add those third line guys every single playoff. That is the Tampa Bay Lightning for me. They're going to add Riley Smith, who's recently been held out. I think he's the perfect fit for them. They need somebody on that right side, especially you look at that second line right now with Brandon Hagel. They've got Gergensen playing on the right side. Maybe
we're saying that Riley Smith is Stamkos light.
He might be Stamkos 5.0. I don't know if I'd go Stamkos light, but yeah. And so to get it done, I think the Rangers are going to get Cam Atkinson. They're going to get a roster guy in return who's been pretty much scratched half the year anyways with the Rangers, and a second-round pick for 2025.
All right. Yeah, I think he'd be a great fit. He's the kind of guy that I guess here's something. Julien Brisebois, GM of the Lightning, something that he did when they were winning Stanley Cups. They were going out and they were grabbing not the old guy who was a UFA. They would go out and grab the young guy who they could cost control. They got Nick Paul. I guess there were times they went out and got like a Blake Coleman who was a UFA at the end of that year, right? Or no, he had 2 years. He had 2 years on his deal when
Ian Goudreau and
yeah. So that would be my only. Let's look at the past, and he tends to bring in guys with some cost control into the next year as well. So that's just there's my pushback.
No, I get it. I completely understand. I just think
the right fit. I think you're willing to do what you need to do, and if Riley Smith is that, and he comes relatively cheap.
You look at what they paid for example, Brandon Hagel, right? It cost them a couple first rounders. Obviously, they knew they were going to get this guy locked up long term, and they were going to get some value out of him.
What a deal that was, because at the time you're looking at Brandon Hagel and going, he's like on Chicago's third line, second line, and yeah, he's shaping up to be a good player. And then he goes and he's on Team Canada, like. Right. He's top 20 Canadian players in the league, which is definitely saying something. So you'd happily give up a couple late first-round picks for that guy again. Can you go out and find another Brandon Hagel? That's one of those you're going to throw back to that. If you're Julien Brisebois, you can be like, look, I made trade for Brandon Hagel.
Look, so I would love to see them go out and make another move like that. But I think Tampa Bay over this last couple of years realized, you know what, we're starting to run out of draft picks. We need to hang on to some capital, and we need to hang on to some futures, right? Some guys, the guys you draft in the third, fourth round, typically don't work out. They have, I don't know what, like a 0.3% chance of making the NHL. For me, they want to covet those first rounders, those second rounders. They're going to go for not necessarily guys on the cheap, but guys that aren't going to cost them a lot of assets to come in and give some real production, which I think Riley Smith can do.
Yes. Here's the other side of it. Why does New York want to ditch Riley Smith right now?
Bottom line is, so they've tried him on the wing with just about every forward they have, and they can't find the chemistry. They just can't make it work. And why? My dad used to always say, stop beating a dead horse, right? Yep. Why keep beating that drum, right? Let's just get rid of him. Let's get something. And New York's in a place, too, right now where they're just looking at it and say, you know what? Yeah, we might make the playoffs. We're going to make a good push. But realistically, are we making the – yeah, might as well get something out of a guy who's going to be a UFA. We probably don't see him re-signing here just, again, because he's not a good fit. So let's go ahead and get something out of him. And if we make the playoffs, great. Let's do it with the guys we have that we know are going to be here past this year.
I don't know why now, but I'm picturing your dad actually kicking a dead horse and having a great time doing it.
And having a great time doing it.
I think I could have stood around with a brew kicking a dead horse with them. Oh, that's funny.
Now I'm just picturing you and I just standing back, just like, this horse, what did it do?
Oh, it's so funny. Number 4.
Yeah, number 4. A wild card. I know there's been a little chatter. I'm 50-50 on actually if he's going to get dealt, but I think Colorado, right, we know they're looking for a little bit more forward help. They went out and got Ryan Lindgren, brought in some help on the back end, but wouldn't shock me at all to see them go ahead and go get a top 6 guy. A guy I think they're going to have to do a little salary retention with. To Colorado, we've got Brad Marchand, 50% retained, so it comes in roughly around $3 million. And to Boston, they're going to send over quality prospect and Oscar Olesen because, again, they don't have a lot of draft capital. And they're going to send their 2026 first rounder to Boston.
I totally missed who you said they were going to acquire.
Oh, Brad Marchand.
Oh, Brad.
Yeah. I think after watching him with Team Canada and Nathan McKinnon, now they weren't playing on the same line. There wasn't chemistry or anything, but there's familiarity there. And I think, again, Boston's not making the playoffs, realistically speaking. Or if they do, they're not making any waves. Why not say, hey, Brad, listen, waive your clause. We'll send you to a playoff contender here or to a Stanley Cup contender. You can go get a cup if you want. You can come back and sign in the offseason and be a Bruin for the rest of your life.
Yeah, he's definitely the guy who could come back. It just is going to depend. Does he want to come back? Does he look at this and go, this isn't going to be just this year. This team is on the downswing. I could go somewhere else and I could be happy. Or is it like, nope, I'm going to be back next year. My family's here. I don't want to go anywhere. Just I'll sign an extension in the offseason if you guys still want me. I guess the other side of it is like, how much is Boston looking at this maybe as a chance to change their whole look?
You could cash in. Like I said, get a first rounder and a prospect for a guy like Brad. Because, again, maybe his offensive numbers haven't been there this season, but he's a guy come playoff time. You want on your team. He's gonna grind. He's gonna produce. He's got the Stanley Cup already, right? And again, I think if there's a player to be had in Boston that could get you a nice return, and again, you could just say, hey, come back and we'll re-sign you in the offseason. He's only got an 18 no trade clause, so I can't imagine Colorado's not on that. But with a guy like that, you're just basically going to go say, hey, where do you want to go? Is it Colorado? Cool, because we got a deal. Let's get it done.
I did see just now that there are some talks out there that Jake Evans is going to sign an extension.
Oh, okay.
Just a possibility. Yeah, the Brad Marchand, that's one of those, like, it absolutely could happen. And if we were playing a video game, it would 100% happen. Like right now, that video game is trading him away because he is going to get you something good to help you later. It's a different look. If they trade Marchand, I don't know that he comes back. These guys have a lot of pride. There's very few players that are on the team their whole career, get traded, and just come right back. Talk to me about when that's ever happened.
Yeah, no, it really hasn't
ever happened. Now, there's been times where players get traded at the deadline and then they go back. I can specifically Doug Waite. I feel like he just kept getting dealt and kept going back to Carolina or the Islanders or one of the. But that wasn't where he was originally. So I think it was like, hey, this is where I'm going to live now. So yeah, go ahead and trade me. I'd like to go play in the playoffs, and then I'll just come back home. But this would feel a little different, wouldn't it? Like the team you've been with your whole career, you're now 35 years old, and they deal you. It would have a fun like.
I'm used to it. Detroit got Mike Modano, Daniel Alfredsson. They had all these players that spent their whole careers on one team.
Right, they did,
So,
but those guys never went back. Like,
no, of
they
course
weren't
not.
going back to their original team. That's what I mean is that, yeah, okay, you could trade for him. I don't have a problem trading for him. I'd love if the Leafs traded for Brad Marchand. That would be hilarious if he went to the Leafs. I thought him and Marner actually had some good moments together. But I don't see him going back to Boston after the fact if he gets dealt. I think this would be like, you want to trade me, that's fine. But like at that point, I think I'm going to go and I'm going to leave and find some better situation for me to win now. Boston isn't going to win the Stanley Cup next year. Like things aren't going that direction for them.
No, but the thing with, okay, so like most of the time when you trade a player of that caliber at the deadline, it's okay, we're going into rebuild mode. It's like time to reset. Same thing, Patrick Kane, right? They just dealt him. It's, hey, it's time. We're going to rebuild, right? And that's what they did in Chicago. But here with Boston, I think with the players they have, the Swaymans, the McAvoys, and Lindholms, they've got pieces in place where I think they could come back. Exactly. They've got these guys in place already where I think just a few tweaks to the lineup, maybe you add one or two key pieces. If you can find a way to make that work in the offseason, make a couple deals, you could easily get Boston back into the top three of that division. So that could easily be a situation where he knows, you know what, hey, it's a shitty year for Boston. I'll come back next year and we got a shot.
That's true. It's definitely a different vibe than a team that's actually falling apart, of course. I just don't see Boston as a team that will contend next year. Maybe.
They're playoff contenders, I think.
Playoff contenders, yes.
Stanley Cup? I don't think so. They got to find a number one center first, but.
Yeah, and they went out, they got Elias Lindholm, and that just, he's got to be with the right guys. Now, he did do a lot better when you consider the Calgary Flames. No, it was his first year that he had an amazing year, 78 points. His first year there. He's probably just past where he's going to be an incredible, like 70,
he's a number 2,
80-point guy, number 2.
Yeah.
And hasn't found the same type of chemistry with Pastrnak as like not that it's fair to say this, but Bergeron is there. Right. Not his fault. That's the case. But. Okay, let's go to number 3.
All right. Pretty much the number 1 guy on everybody's draft boards, Brock Nelson. I think he ends up in Minnesota, a team that needs help at the center position and needs help at the penalty kill. So I think Brock Nelson can check all those boxes, give you some sandpaper. He's a very useful guy. So I think to the Islanders, again, I think they would want I think they still would like some roster players in return. So I think they go after a guy like maybe Yakov Trenin, who was in Nashville. Colorado has shown some flashes. So I think that's a guy maybe they can try to make work out in the next couple of years. Now that Anthony Duclair looks like he might not work out there and might get dealt, we'll see how that goes. He's scratched again. But I think on top of that, the Minnesota Wild are going to throw in a first rounder and a 2026 fifth rounder as well to make it happen.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know that Yakov Trenin is getting dealt with 3 years left on that deal.
That's fair.
He just signed that deal, right? This is his first year in that deal. Not that I would go to, it would be a smack in the face, but it is like why'd you sign me if you just wanted to deal me? And I know he hasn't been incredible for them, but I think looking at what he was able to do previous, he's right on pace with that. He's an interesting one. Why you signed a guy whose best season was 24 points to a $3.5 million deal, I don't know.
Potential.
He had some Corsi numbers that looked nice, but he never looked like anybody to me that could go out and put up a lot of points. But he's certainly somebody who can kill penalties and has a place. I'm sure if he continues to get 20 points, I'm sure you look at that and go, we'd love to deal him. I don't know that anyone would want him in that case. Would the Islanders want Yakov Trenin? I don't know. I don't know if he's the guy that they're looking to add to their lineup, another guy who literally can't score. Just can't.
That's fair. Okay, that's fair.
But I liked the move with Brock Nelson. The Wild makes sense. They have the cap space. They could certainly do it. It's very strange to talk about the Minnesota Wild having cap space, but they do. It's been a long time since they've had cap space.
Yep.
All right, to the top two.
All right, this is where things get a little crazy.
Okay.
Get a little wild here.
All right.
Number 2, got my Red Wings. Listen, I was on Twitter today and just threw out a couple little trade possibilities, something I thought would be fun to see. This one probably got the most attention, so I figured, you know what? I'm throwing it on the list.
All right.
I think the Wings need to make a splash about almost more than any other team on the bubble right now. And so for me, I've got them going to Buffalo. We know they've been poking around at Dylan Cousins for quite a while. So I think to make a bigger splash, not only do they go after Cousins, but they go after an RFA who I don't know wants to re-sign in Buffalo, and that's Bowen Byram. So pick up 2 players here.
Okay.
And in return, I think they've got to send Buffalo one JT Comfort because they want, obviously, I think Buffalo wants a roster guy. So a guy who they could plug in at their second line center position. They're also going to get a young, I would say bottom 6 guy, but I think who's got a lot of potential. That's Jonathan Berggren, a top defensive prospect in Shea. I'm going to butcher his last name, but Byam. He, to me, is a top 3 defensive prospect for Detroit and probably top 10 defensive prospect in the NHL right now. Got a lot of promise. So I'd throw him in there. You're going to also throw in, I think you're going to have to throw in a first rounder for 2025, which for me, I think Detroit would have to probably make a top 10 protected pick, just in case they happen to miss the playoffs, of course. And then you're going to have to throw in, I think, a couple more. I put in 2025 and 26 third round pick. So you're going to have to throw in a couple of those mid-level draft picks. I think it's going to take 6-7 pieces to get something like that.
You're going to have to pad that a little. Now, here's what I'm wondering. JT Compher does have an 10-team no-trade list. I would be very surprised if the Buffalo Sabres weren't on that list. So, but you could go and say, are you willing to waive this? Which I'm sure he'd say, God, no, I'm not. So if that were the case, now there's always the possibility, like sometimes 10-team no-trade list, someone like that, he might have all 7 Canadian teams on there.
Right.
And then have San Jose and Chicago maybe, and like Buffalo. That's probably the teams on there. That would be my guess if you didn't want to go play in Canada at all. Yeah. But okay, let's assume they're not on, or that he is, that they are on his list. So you can't trade JT Compher. Are you comfortable with Veleno or Rasmussen being dealt in his stead?
I think, yeah, you're going to have to throw one of those guys in there, but I think it's going to take a little bit more than 2. Maybe instead of throwing in like a first and 2 thirds in there, now you might have to throw in 2 first-round picks, or even better, instead of a guy like Jonathan Berggren, now you're asking for a guy like Nate Danielson, right? A top forward prospect out of Detroit. And I think if I'm Detroit, I'm still willing to pull the trigger on something like that because, again, I think Dylan Cousins is not necessarily proven, but he's at least shown he has that 60-point potential. Whereas, again, Nate Danielson isn't quite there yet.
Yeah. And if you're Detroit, it has been a long time since you've sniffed postseason hockey. There's some point that you just have to go, we have to go in. Not all in, but Detroit has not even been in for a while. There has not been any trade deadline where you felt like they were, we want to make the playoffs here. Even last year, where they were knocking on the door, it was one extra overtime loss. They're in. I could see it happening. I certainly think they need to make a move. And I think that would be, are you willing to deal someone significant? Because you're getting someone pretty significant in return. And you got to think, what are other teams going to be willing to deal for Cousins?
Yeah, that's why I think, again, you throw in that defensive prospect, the first rounder, I think that's enough to get maybe Cousins there with, again, maybe a couple other little small pieces, but throwing in another roster player, maybe a prospect and a couple thirds, I think is enough to get that done. But something interesting just read too. I was just popping on the old Twitter feed. I like to give it a poke every once in a while. And rumor is, just read a little tweet. Don't know any validity behind this, but rumor is the Red Wings are sniffing around at Ryan O'Reilly right now. So,
now he'd be interesting. He'd certainly be interesting. I don't know that he's like the difference between them winning a round or not. I would say Cousins would make them a little scarier. Ryan O'Reilly, yeah, he could throw a couple big hits in the playoffs, but I don't know that he's fine. He certainly would provide some leadership. But I don't think the Wings are really lacking championship leadership. All right. Let's go to, and you had Bo Byram in there too. So that would be a big, giant get for the Red Wings. So essentially, you're talking about taking some prospects and swapping them with Buffalo's more matured players and throwing in some draft picks. And maybe if one of their veteran players is willing, because you got to also get some cap space.
Yeah, pretty much. And maybe, you know what, with a guy like JT Compher, maybe at the beginning of the year, right? You just already asked if you're Eisman for the no trade list, right? Maybe again with a guy like JT Compher at the beginning of the year, thought, okay, Buffalo's going to be a contender this year. They're getting better, so maybe I'll just put those Canadian teams on there and leave them off. So
now, yeah, it's gonna be a tough one to go grab both those guys.
Yes.
The Buffalo Sabres, when it comes to Kevin Adams, he's their general manager. How comfortable are you, if you're a Sabres fan, with him moving those two players?
I think the problem is going to be, one, Bowen Byram, right? Is he re-signing? I know he's an RFA and you can maybe take him to arbitration, whatever. He still doesn't have to sign, but I think that might be a situation where he's leaving already, right? He's 1 foot out the door.
Easier to deal him than it would be to also deal Cousins at the same time. But I'm just saying, if I'm a Sabres fan, are you looking at this? Is Kevin Adams going to have a job at the end of the year?
Yeah, that's a good question. So
maybe
I want
him to be the guy who deals them.
I don't know.
He hasn't done much right in my mind. It all started out with the Eichel thing. Eichel's won a cup, and Kevin Adams hasn't. All right, let's go to trade number 1. Does it involve Mikko Rantanen?
It does.
All right.
Okay, so hold on to your horses for this one. But for me, I think there's one team more than any that's been slowly creeping up the standings in the Western Conference, and I actually think I would love to see them in the playoffs. Their defensive core.
I know who you're going to say.
Yep, their defensive core has been down and out, injured all year. They have, I think, 9 total games they've all played together. But the Utah Hockey Club, you want to make a splash, right? Go trade for a guy like Mikko Rantanen, get him re-signed, give him $15 million. I know they're going to have an open checkbook for a guy like this because they want to make a splash this offseason. So,
and he'd be super close to Colorado.
I know. That's why it'd be even more fantastic for me. But to get a move like this done, obviously, I think you've got to start with a guy like, again, probably going to butcher his last name, but Matthias Maselli. Yeah, I think that this guy, again, he's shown potential, 40 points last year, I think. Obviously having a down year, but he signed to a very team-friendly deal. I think he would be something, again, if Carolina can get a roster player out of this with term on the cheap that they could potentially turn into a quality middle six guy, this would be a good get for them.
You got to also think, whoever you're trading Rantanen for, you just lost Nyquist.
Right.
You got to get something sexy in return.
So you get this guy, you get a sexy prospect in Sam Lipkin, and then I think you're also going to have to get a couple big draft picks out of this as well. So obviously they're going to have to give up a first rounder, but I also think you're probably going to need a third or second rounder in there that becomes conditional on him re-signing. So whether or not that turns into a second or another first, I think that's also going to have to be part of the package as well.
I know you mentioned that there were some dream scenarios. I'd like to hear.
That was them.
Oh, those were the top 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
I threw those in there. But
I got you. Yeah. I didn't know if Sidney Crosby was going to get dealt to the Toronto.
Oh gosh,
that
would be something. For me though, Mikko Rantanen is really the funnest one for me because I just picture him playing alongside a guy like Logan Cooley and Clayton Keller, guys that know how to dish the puck and have some skill. That would be fun to watch over the next 6, 7, 8 years, however many they can get him re-signed for. And then, of course, like you mentioned, Colorado right around the corner. If Logan Cooley turns out to be the player we thought he could be, and then maybe Martin Nyquist just fizzles out a little bit, you're like, oh, there's 3 90-plus point players over there in Utah, and
that's very true. Yeah, and for those of you who have thought, could Colorado just go back and get Mikko Rantanen? The answer is no. They cannot. So you can't go and, because they have some of his contract held in that trade, he can't be dealt back to that team for 12 months or something like that.
Yeah.
A full calendar year. So he cannot go back to Colorado unless he signs there in free agency.
Which would be fun too.
That would be fascinating. They worked all that out, but
don't know if they could afford that.
Who knows? Maybe he gets toured around the league and I just want to go back home. I'll take $1 million off my deal, and they just work it out.
If they could find a way to trade Casey Middlestat,
Be wild.
they could fit him in there then.
That would be wild. We only have 92 hours from this moment of recording to the trade deadline. Already 3 trades have happened, and I'm hoping for some of these trades to come true. I will say my wild dream scenario is somewhere out there. Miko Rantanen comes to the Leafs and immediately signs a long-term deal, and then they trade Mitch Marner and just blow everybody's brains out.
Wow.
Like, people would be shocked by that, and it would be I don't necessarily think Rantanen's better than Marner, but if he's not going to sign there and Rantanen would getting dealt there, I would be okay with it.
Well, let me ask you this. I don't think it's going to happen. Obviously, if again you go to Marner and he's like, nah, I'm going to explore it. He doesn't say I'm not going to sign, but he says, you know what, I want to test free agency and just see what's out there.
Yeah.
Would you entertain trading Marner for Rantanen 1-for-1 straight up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would.
I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, it would give the Leafs some cap space. So
a lot of cap space.
if they were able to go in that direction, yeah. I don't think they're going to trade Marner, and I just think it's purely from a blow it up, like just make everybody go what standpoint. I don't think they're going to trade Marner. They'll go into the playoffs, the same exact team, and we'll see if it can work again. And if they win, people are going to be like, wow, look at their patience. They were so patient. We all knew that they had the capabilities, and here it is. But if they go and they lose in the first 2 rounds, it's going to be like, we all knew that this wasn't a winning combination. We tried to tell you that.
Part of me just wants to see them lose for the chaos, but you know what? I still, at my dream scenario for the playoffs, if I'm being honest with you, even though I know it would just be a blowout for the Wings, would be Toronto to take that number 1 spot and the Wings get in that first wild card spot, and then you see those 2 teams play.
It would be so fun.
First round.
It would be so fun.
We're buying tickets.
We would 100% would buy tickets. Yes, 100%. All right, that is our trade deadline show. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok and X at OT Hockey Talk. Go follow us there. Talk to us about how ridiculous our trades are and what you think your team is going to do at the deadline. We do have some big news. We're not going to officially drop it yet, but we've got some big things happening with Overtime Hockey Talk. So for those of you who have been listening for a long time, we just want to say thank you to you because things are moving up. The show's getting better, and we've got some people behind us, and so we'll share more as things come out. But we are joining a podcast network, and we'll tell you more out about it when it happens. But we just wanted to thank our listeners for sticking around for so long, and yeah, we hope that it's going to allow us to bring you more and even better content as we go forward.
More content. I love it. And more of this in high def.
More of that. Yes. Yeah. We need to get you something. Yeah. We need to get you something in 1080p. You know,
I'm going 4K.
4K. There you go. I want to see all your wrinkles. Here, ready? There you go. You can see all mine. All right. That's our show. We'll talk to you guys soon.